It's 30 years after the tourney at Ashford Meadow, where Dunk's story had begun. He was now a member of the King's Guard, and the king he guarded was his dear friend Egg, now Aegon V. He had been crowned just 6 years earlier. After enacting many reforms and granting rights and protections to the common folk, the king provoked defiance and opposition from the lords. In 237 AC, King Aegon had his 3 sons and daughter marry into some of the great families of Westeros. This came with the help of the king's wife, Bethel Blackwood, who arranged the marriages. The king and queen both disapproved of the Targaryen practice of marrying brother to sister, so they also saw this as an effort to win the support of the lords. Of course, the children were too young at the time, so the arranged marriages would have taken place later in time. But now, in 239 AC, the first signs were showing that the children had inherited their father's stubbornness when it came to following their hearts and choosing a partner. The king's oldest son was Prince Duncan Targaryen. He had been engaged to the daughter of Lyonel Baratheon. But while traveling in the Riverlands, he came upon a mysterious girl who called herself Jenny of Oldstones. She lived half wild among ruins and claimed that she was a descendant of long-vanished kings of the First Men. But the small folk of the surrounding villages mocked her and insisted that she was just a crazy peasant girl, or even a witch. But even so, Duncan went against his father's wishes and married her. The king demanded that his son put Jenny aside, but Prince Duncan refused him. Then the High Septon, the Grand Maester, and the small council joined together to insist King Aegon to force his son to choose between the Iron Throne and this wild woman of the woods. Duncan abdicated and renounced his claim to the crown in favor of his younger brother Jaehaerys. But this, however, would not restore peace, nor win back the trust and friendship of Lyonel Baratheon, who 30 years earlier had come to the help of Dunk at Ashford Meadow. He had always been one of the most loyal supporters of King Aegon. But now the Laughing Storm's pride was wounded, and the prince's actions had brought shame and dishonor to House Baratheon. And so a short but bloody rebellion ensued. He renounced his fealty to the Iron Throne and declared himself Storm King, something that hadn't existed since the days of Aegon's conquest. No details of his rebellion are given. All we know is that peace is restored once the Kingsguard Sir Duncan the Tall challenged Lord Lyonel to trial by combat. To appease the situation, King Aegon promised that his youngest daughter, Raelle, would marry Lord Lyonel's son and heir, Ormond Baratheon. Although the girl was young, to seal the agreement, the king sent his daughter to Storm's End to serve as Lord Lyonel's cupbearer and companion to his lady wife. Afterwards, the marriage was consummated and their son Steffan was born. Steffan Baratheon was the father of Robert, Stannis, and Renly. Egg's youngest daughter was their grandmother. Meanwhile, Jenny of Oldstones, or Lady Jenny as she was called, was eventually accepted at court and became loved by the small folk, while Prince Duncan became known as the Prince of Dragonflies.